I do want to say, first of all, it's an honor being here tonight. And I know that everyone in this room, like myself, as a veteran, that you served not only your country, but I want to thank every one of you because I know every one of you continue to serve. Because veterans, that's what veterans do, especially combat veterans. They come back, they have families, they have a job, they pay taxes, they're public servants, they're teachers, they're educators, they're businessmen, and they give back to the community. So I want to thank all of you for not only serving your country, but I know that each and every one of you continue to serve, and that's what I want to thank you for. So give yourself a round of applause. Hey. All right. I'm going to do a little presentation tonight. I was recently, after I retired, I was contacted by Jewell Hospice. They were having a lot of difficulty with veterans in their program. And not only were these veterans, were in hospice and they're dying, but the social workers and the staff and the veterans were all struggling with how to deal with isolation with veterans, because veterans have some really, as we're going to discuss tonight, they have some really unique issues. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about how some of the veterans can cope with the isolation that's brought on by the post-pandemic world, okay? And I've got a little bit of help tonight because part of the section of this is we're going to talk a little bit about pets and how pets can impact and help reduce blood pressure, help reduce isolation, depression. And I want to introduce Matt Decker and Larson. Larson, why don't you come up here? When I get to that little section, I'm going to have Matt talk a little bit about service dogs and how pets can help, and we call it, medication without side effects. Okay, go ahead and go on to the next one. Next slide. I had to search really hard for this next slide. This is the actual first picture of a microscope. Of the coronavirus. This is the one that came out of China, the original one, right there. So, veterans will experience challenges during the pandemic. Next one. Okay, some veterans will struggle with mental health issues. Next one. All of them certainly have earned our help. Next. Okay. Extremely important that we talk a little bit about before we do anything else is I spent my entire career with the VA and as a veteran service officer the last 35 years talking about veterans and trying to dispel some of these myths and stereotypes that the media and TV and everybody portray, how they portray veterans, especially Vietnam veterans. Okay, some of the stereotypes I hear all the time, veterans are angry. Nothing could be further from the truth. All veterans are men. Bullshit. Women served. One of my last acts as the director of the Concord Vet Center is I had 300 women veterans at the American Legion Hall in Vallejo and celebrated their service from all over the Bay Area, Women served too. And a lot of them are serving in combat roles now. All right. All veterans are in a crisis, And this is what the public assumes about all of you, a good majority of the public. And all veterans can obtain VA services. Unfortunately, that's not true. Okay? I'm one of those few dinosaurs that worked in the Veterans Healthcare Administration, the vet centers, the National Cemetery System, sat on the board, and I also did benefits and worked with the Veterans Benefit Administration. I'm one of those few dinosaurs that understands all the entities within the VA. And when people just say, oh, you can go to the VA and get, that's not really true. It depends, and everybody is unique, everybody's different, and there's a million different factors involved in veterans VA services. It is by far the most complicated bureaucracy, way above Social Security. Social Security is second, VA bureaucracy is top of the list. All veterans have served in combat. That's not true. Okay? You have to be in combat to get PTSD. Bullshit. Excuse my language. You know, you don't. There's a lot. I worked with a lot of veterans that saw some pretty horrible accidents in peacetime that had post-traumatic stress disorder and suffered horribly. Okay? All right. And military sexual trauma. One of the worst things that I had to do as a counselor is work with men and women that were severely traumatized in the military through sexual trauma. Okay, next slide. Some of the positives, okay, so if we're going to talk about stereotypes, we need to talk about some of the positives. Positive military service, pride, values, honor, significant responsibility during wartime. So, guess what, you know? Why wouldn't you want to hire a veteran? I mean, I had a TV reporter on Sacramento one time that tried to get me to say that Vietnam veterans with PTSD can't be employed. He tried like hell for half an hour holding that microphone in front of me. Every time he tried to get me to say something negative about a Vietnam, I'd say, well, why wouldn't you want to hire a veteran? Gee whiz, they show up on time, they take responsibility for their actions, you know, they're good workers, you know, they're committed to the community, you know, and so every time he should, you know, try and get me to say something negative, you know, I tell, and God bless him, I watched his whole little interview, he didn't say one negative thing about Vietnam veterans, but he sure as hell tried to get me to say something on camera. Veterans are competent, you know, they have a sense of accomplishment, a sense of meaning, a sense of belonging, and that's why they work so well in the community. That's why they volunteer at the churches, and that's why they volunteer at their school. That's why guys like Bill Green here. Oh my God, how many students?
90-some thousand.
90-some thousand students standing up and talking to them about Vietnam and the military and military service. You know, sense of meaning and belonging. They have a sense of meaning. Development of close relationships and family. Cross-cultural stuff. Oh my God, I'm not going to lie to you. I grew up in all lily white Green Bay, Wisconsin. The only African Americans when I was in Green Bay, Wisconsin in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, early 70s, played for the Green Bay Packers. Not kidding. The local police chief, no kidding. He used to, any African American, he put them on a bus to Milwaukee, 120 miles north. I mean, that's what I grew up in. And I think one of the reasons I actually wanted to go into the military and not go right into college is because I knew that there was something beyond lily white Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I am glad I did, you know, and I'm willing to admit that I grew up in that environment. But now, after my cross-cultural experiences and my life experiences in the military with people from all walks of life has made me a better person, okay? And it's given me a unique perspective about the world in which every one of you have in this room, okay? All right, next slide. How do we keep from isolating during the pandemic, okay? Let's talk about that, okay? Buddy checks, connecting with other veterans and friends. So how do we do that, okay? The best model, go ahead and go to the next slide. The best model that I could find when I was doing my research comes from the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. I think that they had the best description of a buddy system. Buddy system is an effective method by which we deploy staff members share responsibilities for his or her partner's safety, well-being. You know, I wanted to really define it. You know, so how do we do those buddy checks, and what do we do? What are some of the things we say? What are some of the things we shouldn't say? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about. Next one. Okay. Putting a buddy system into action, you know, best if we deploy two-man teams. These are some folks with the American Legion. It seems to be the one veterans service organization that led the way nationally right off the bat during the pandemic. They were immediately going to their 2 million members nationwide, and they were saying, look, every post, every district, every department in California or wherever you're at, you know, they were saying, look, you need to be reaching out to your members. You need to be calling them. You need to visit them, make sure they're okay. These are some American Legion folks that were right off the bat, they're checking in with members, okay? Next slide. Buddy system actions, okay? Some of the things to do and not to do when we're checking on somebody, okay? That you think might be depressed. Oh, by the way, if you think somebody, let me just say this. Don't ever be afraid to ask somebody if they're thinking about suicide. If you even have an inkling in the back of your head that they're thinking about suicide, do not be afraid to answer the question. Let me tell you why. Because 99% of the time, if you think somebody's depressed, suicidal, you know, and the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and I know it does for every one of you guys in this room, you need to ask that question. Because I cannot tell you how many times in my career where I sat with a veteran and I said, yeah, hey, Larry, are you thinking about suicide? Absolutely. Oh my God, nobody's ever asked me. You know? So if you think somebody is, you know, acting a little weird, maybe he's giving shit away to all his friends, you know, maybe he's having too much fun, ask the question, because if you truly mean it, they're going to tell you, and then you can get them some professional help, okay? So be a good listener to your buddy. Actively communicate with buddies to understand their perspective, okay? So what does it mean to be a good listener? Can anybody tell me? Yeah, it's hard for me. I'll be the first one to admit it. As a therapist, you know, I mean, there are several people, even there's 2 or 3 of you in this room, I'm going to tell you right now, that 15, 20 years ago, you walked into my office, and I never met you before, and within 2 minutes, I knew you had full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder, you really needed help, or where. And I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying, you're pretty screwed up, you know, because I knew that if I said something there and then, you know, guess what? You know, Joe's going to run and never come back. Being an active listener is not only, you know, listening to what they're saying, but being able to give them the information in a way that they can understand it, because ultimately, I'm not the one that needs to change their behavior or feel better. It's the person sitting across from me. And so my job is to facilitate and teach that person how to help themselves. And I'm never going to work harder than that person sitting across from me. And if they don't think you're invested in them getting better, they're not going to go with you. Okay? So, and I've had vets 6 months, a year, 2, 3, 4 years. They would finally say something, and I would go. And I'd knock my hat off my head, just like that, and I'd go, oh my God, what did you just say? And I would repeat it back to them, because in that moment, it's been 5 years, they finally said the one thing that's going to help them heal, okay? So that's what it's really all about, okay? Get help if you have reason to believe your buddy may be a threat. Try to, you know, you're not a therapist, but if the hair in the back of your neck stands up, let's get them to professional help, okay? What not to do? Offer clinical diagnosis or treatment. You know, hey, what not to do as a therapist, and I made that mistake, was to don't diagnose family and friends, because that'll get you in a lot of trouble. I mean, yeah, and never give your wife an IQ test. When I was getting my master's, they sent me home with the IQ kit, and the instructor said don't do family members. So I did my neighbors, but I had to do one more person. And I had class the next day, and so I did, you know, I did the whole test of my wife, you know, and I'm going, holy shit, she's smarter than me. She's going to score off the scale when I score this thing. And so I got to the end, you know, and I went, okay, thank you very much. She goes, now you're going to score it, right? I go, well, no, I don't think I'm going to score it. You know, I knew that, you know, I was in trouble. So, you know, never diagnose or treat family or friends, you know. That's a good thing to remember, especially as a therapist. Don't pass judgment on other people. just by the way they look, by the way they talk, really, get to know them, really trying to understand where they're coming from. And here's something. When these veterans used to come to me and I knew they have PTSD, why would I want to talk about PTSD in the first visit if I know the veteran's got post-traumatic stress, I know he's in a lot of trouble, if he's not sure where his next meal's going to come from, he's going through a divorce, he doesn't have enough money, not sure where he's going to live, what do we got to do? We got to address those underlying issues before we even get to what's really going on with the veteran. Okay? Don't try and pry things out. If somebody's uncomfortable and tells you to back off, go ahead and back off. Okay, next slide. All right, here we go. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Matt Decker. Now, Matt is used to be a therapist at the Concord Vet Center. He also worked, 3 or 4 years as the executive director for Paws for Purple Hearts out of Santa Rosa. And one of the needs, I'm on the board of E5 Therapy up in Suisun. There is no vet center up in Solano County, and we have the largest population in the country of returning veterans. And so Matt started a nonprofit, and we have totally outstripped in 2 years our 7-year projection. We're seeing hundreds of veterans. We've got how many therapists now?
5.
5 therapists. And if you can't afford it, if you don't have any insurance or whatever, we're paying for it. We're a nonprofit. And so Matt, I want to have Matt talk a little about pets, medication without side effects.
One correction, I was not the executive director of Paws for Purple Hearts, I was the clinical director.
Clinical director, thank you.
But I am the executive director of E5 Therapy. The goal there is to fill the service gaps that the VA has. We don't limit ourselves to who, what, where, when, why, and how. We do whatever it takes. The motto of E5 Therapy, it's where the work gets done. How that happens is up to the veteran that walks through the door, or the spouse, or their child, or anybody that lives in the house with them. As people of service, we don't just sit within ourselves. We have families, we have friends, and if they come to us and they say, hey, my wife's struggling, great, let's help her. Why? Because that's the best way I can serve that veteran. I'll serve the wife, I'll serve the husband, we'll do the couples work, we'll see the kids. Whatever the veteran needs, we're gonna fill that gap. Places the VA isn't gonna go right now. Now, on to the fun part, pets.
Okay, next slide.
Pets are literally a medication, the same as all of those drugs that the VA gives out for depression and anxiety. We can find the same benefit and clinical impact utilizing well-behaved and trained dogs, and yeah, if we had 2 cats. I bet you can guess which side of the fence I land on.
Thank you.
Now, fun thing about this is when I started my work in canine-assisted therapy, I had to say things like, research suggests. Since the time I started in canine-assisted therapy, we've actually gotten the authority and permission to say, research now proves, which is huge for us. Because suggesting that research is a good thing, Larson, do you need help? He's over here pulling over.
Bill.
Oh, it's Bill?
Bill.
That's fair.
He's used to it.
He likes playing with you. You have a good pool. Research proves that the presence of a pet and their interaction with the human counterpart decreases their blood pressure and their heart rate. Now, I know it sounds a little weird. Let me get more specific. When I say blood pressure and heart rate, 30 pets per minute. That's you sitting on the couch going, decrease in heart rate, decrease in blood pressure. The physical change increases as you engage with your pet. You'll see a decrease in stress hormones like cortisol. You'll see an increase in serotonin. That's what those antidepressant chemicals are all trying to build up in your system. You'll see an increase in oxytocin. You'll see an increase in dopamine.
Next slide. Next slide has that.
Oh, there we go. Our chemical impacts, yes. Sorry, I get ahead. Jeff put the one together, so it doesn't look like mine. But we've got this idea that we can utilize the pet and gain the same chemical impact as an SSRI or an anti-anxiety because of something that we've learned in the research called synchronization. Synchronization is a pack behavior. As I'm sure most of you know, we are pack animals just like the dog. And because we're a pack animal, when we are engaged with our pack, we will start to calm down and we will start to engage with our pack the same way they're engaging with us. That means as the dog calms down, which is why it's really important not to have chihuahuas. As the dog calms down, so will you. It's natural, it's biological. We've spent, depending on the research you look at, 40,000 to 400,000 years domesticating the dog. Their brain and our brain, proportioned differently, because they smell way better than we do, are almost identically mapped. The way a dog recognizes the face of a loved one is the same way your child does. That's how ingrained this is. It's not something that can be resisted. Sure, you want to sit there and get all amped up while you're cuddling a 75-pound lap dog? Sure, you can get yourself amped up. But if you give yourself over just to being relaxed, the dog's not going to judge you. Cats might. A dog's not going to judge you. They're not going to cheat you. They're not going to steal from you. And without all of that judgment and without all of that pressure in your head, all of a sudden, they will not steal your dinner. I heard that. They might be a little opportunistic. In the Marines, we don't lie, cheat, or steal. But we may acquire some things every once in a while, specifically from our Army friends. But if you can imagine, for those of you that take the VA cocktail, why not try this at home? Take a couple of deep breaths with your favorite four-legged friend. Get 30 pets per minute in. If you have one or more chihuahuas, this could be very difficult. Do not chase them. Just bring their food to your lap. Works every time. But this can drastically improve your issues with isolation. It can drastically improve your issues with motivation. All of those positive chemicals that get suppressed over time, because we've dealt with a lot of crap, haven't we? We want to build those chemicals in. Your SSRIs, your antidepressants, your anti-anxieties, all have side effects. You can read them on the bottle. Canine-assisted therapy and the practice therein is quite literally a medication with no side effects whatsoever. Thanks for your time.
Okay.
Oh. Oh.
Matt's going to do a short demonstration here. Short demonstration here.
Oh, he's a good boy. Come here. Come here. Can I get his snuggles? Can I get him snuggles? Yes, he's a good boy. Yes, that's a good boy.
30 pets. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. How easy is this? And if you sit here and pet on a dog, they're not gonna leave. Because this is their best therapy. It is 100% our best therapy. Because leave it to Mike. Because this is where you don't have to worry about the judgment and the love. It comes from here no matter what. It doesn't matter if you yelled at them 5 minutes ago from chewing on your shoes. They come back way faster than any wife after you yelled at them.
All right, well, thank you very much. All right, thank you. All right, next slide, please. We just got a couple more minutes. So challenges veterans face when isolated. Okay, next slide. Feeling separate. Veterans often feel different, okay? Guess what? If you've been in a combat situation, guess what? You can't not have been affected in some way. So, in my experience, veterans, whether you were in combat or not, you look at the world differently, okay? And it's because of that whole life experience. Maybe it wasn't in combat. Maybe it was with your job and whatever branch of service you're in or whatever. It could be anything, but veterans tend to look at the world differently. And they often think that others around them, don't understand the world, okay? So the challenges they face, letting down their guard, allowing themselves to feel, veterans are always going, oh, I have to be strong, I'm a survivor, they don't like to ask for help, reintegration, they have problems connecting with old friends, lack of daily structure, what should I do today? Suffering from invisible wounds of many types. Next slide. Other factors impacting veterans. These are some great slides, boy. I had to really do a little bit of research. And by the way, I do have the credit for each of these photos and where I took them from, if anybody wants to ask where I got them from. Next one. Okay. Situations that remind veterans of past events. Most veterans trying to avoid situations or people or memories of their past traumatic events. And this can increase the isolation. So, you can imagine someone in hospice, right? And they're isolating because of COVID. Imagine a veteran who has post-traumatic stress disorder and some of the issues that compound the problems that he might have in this post-pandemic world. Next slide. I love this photo because it's, this young lady here has the 1,000-yard stare, feeling numb. Many veterans find it hard to have positive or loving feelings towards others. And so this is another issue, that we run into with veterans with the isolating and their anxiety and their depression. It's because they have a really hard time expressing their own loving feelings. And for any of the wives out here, they could probably stand up and tell you a lot of stories. All right, next. Feeling jittery can cause you to suddenly get angry or irritable, sleep problems, concentration impaired, always feeling on guard, easily startled. Next slide. Isolation triggers for veterans. Next slide. So, very important to understand that veterans, especially combat veterans, may react to our 5 senses, okay, which is smells. Now, my favorite, I had to search to find a photograph of Diesel here. I hate to tell you how many times in therapy I've sat across from a Vietnam veteran and says, I'll never own a damn diesel truck. And I go, well, why is that?
Burn shit.
Because I had to burn shit in Vietnam, so the smell of diesel triggers those memories, from all the diesel trucks, from having to burn shit, from all the diesel fuel and everything that was used in the combat zone. Smells can be a trigger. Next slide. Sounds, of course. Favorite one. A lot of different. 4th of July. Oh my God. How many veterans? Almost every veteran I've ever seen. What do they do on the 4th of July and New Year's Eve? They go into their man cave and they put on their headset and turn up or they watch TV or they turn up the music like so they don't have to listen to what?
Fireworks.
The fireworks, the gunshots, you know. Okay, next slide. This is one that a lot of folks tend to forget, especially I'm very cognizant of this, especially in all the work I did with bereavement. That anniversary dates could be a real trigger. And you know, Roxanne back here, this Gold Star mom, I think I told her one time, I said, Roxanne, you know, for the next 18 months, you're going to struggle. Why? Because you're going to come up upon Thanksgiving, Christmas, your son's birthday, the day he went in the service, maybe his favorite holiday or whatever it might be. So usually if you have a death of a close loved one, there's that 18-month period. But anniversary dates could also be a trigger for a lot of veterans, and we have to understand this. Had a Vietnam veteran in my office maybe 20 years ago, when I first started at the Oakland Vet Center, and he comes in and he goes, you know, he goes, December, January, you know, it's January, I think it's in late December, early January. Every year, man, I'm depressed. I can't figure out what's going on. I can't sleep, whatever. And after really talking to him, we finally figured out that every year around the 10 offenses, because he was there, you know, and then I brought his wife in. His wife goes, holy shit, that's it, you know. So once we opened that box and he understood that this is the reason why he was so depressed and angry and isolating himself and mad at the kids and mad at his wife for like a whole month, you know. Once we understood that, then we were able to work with that and we were able to move beyond that. I still get a Christmas card from this guy's wife every year telling me how I saved his marriage just because I brought her in and we had a conversation and I had the veteran really talk to her and we figured out, you know, what's really going on here, what's the underlying problem. Anniversary dates, huge trigger for a lot of folks. And I know that many of you in here are thinking of a particular anniversary date. All right. Television and movies. Oh my God. My wife used to get so pissed at me, you know, every time they have a movie come out, I think it was last one was Hacksaw Ridge or whatever, I'd say, hey, I gotta go to the theater, I gotta see it right when it comes out. She'd go, why? And I say, because I'm going into my Vietnam veteran group next week and I'm gonna say to them, you don't go see that movie. Because it is gonna be a huge trigger for you, you know, and it's gonna set us back in therapy, you know. So I used to go out and try and, you know, all the movies, especially those with a lot of combat scenes in them and everything. And you know, you really have to be cognizant of that because it can be a huge trigger. It's like Saving Private Ryan. Next one. How can we help? Next one. Start a conversation. What you do in the military. Where did you serve? Don't assume all veterans served Iraq, Afghanistan, or they assume somewhere else. Don't assume that a woman, I was telling a story earlier, my first day at the Concord Vet Center, one of the work studies, you know, a young lady walked in and the guy at the counter said, hey, you here for your husband who's in group? And I went, holy shit. I walked out there and I said, young man, come here. You know, and I said, I looked at this lady that walked in and I said, did you serve? And she said, absolutely, thank you very much. And I brought the entire staff in on the first day, brought everybody out of the office, and I said, first person to say to a woman that walks through these doors, are you a wife or a spouse of a veteran? You're fired. Okay? When women walk through these doors, the first thing you need to say is, did you serve? Because if you say that to a woman veteran, they're hooked. They're there. If you don't, they're going to leave. You know? And so we were very successful because we appreciated and respected the fact that women served. Okay? How you doing with your family? Good questions to ask. Okay? Next slide. Things you probably shouldn't do. you know, if they don't want to give you specifics, let it go, okay? Don't ever minimize things, because minimizing is terrible. We are all bad, we're all really good at minimizing our own stuff, and you know, and it's really bad if someone else minimizes things in your life, okay? So don't minimize things in a veteran's life, okay? Making assumptions about any veteran's political or foreign, you know, politics does not belong in any discussion. And for any of you that may have been in any of my groups, well, when politics came up, what did I used to do? Stop. You got about 10 seconds, we're done. If you let it go longer than 30 seconds, you're always going to have one guy extremely to the right and one extremely to the left and a whole bunch of people in the middle. And if you let politics take over a conversation in a group, guess what? You got fisticuffs going on, which happened a couple times, by the way. I got pretty good at breaking up fights. All right, next one. Maintain awareness of issues that may impact veterans. Remember that mental health and physical issues may make it difficult for some veterans to understand things, okay? So not only do we have physical issues, we have other mental health issues that we have to be aware of. Avoid putting a veteran on the spot, even when a veteran appears comfortable doing so. Not everyone is ready to talk. But, you know, just say, hey, how you doing? Where did you serve? Tell me about yourself. Okay. One of the things that I learned doing bereavement, especially with the parents or the family members, is I had to really bite my tongue, because it really wasn't, you know, I was uncomfortable. Most people are uncomfortable when they talk to folks that have lost a loved one. But my favorite thing to say was, tell me about your son. Tell me about your daughter. You know, I had many times, you know, where I feel real uncomfortable, and they say, hey, you know, come on, I want to have coffee with you, and I really realized that what they're really saying is, come on over here, I want to tell you about my son. When I finally figured that out, bereavement became pretty easy. Okay. All right. Next slide. We're going to wind it up. We're going to wind it up here. Be flexible whenever possible. Sometimes they say you can't tell what's really bothering them. Encourage involvement. Many veterans lead isolated lives. You know, so we all know what you guys do here. Encourage others to become involved. John Robbins, where's John?
He's in the back.
Yeah, John and my man, they're pretty good at getting people involved. Okay, so all right. Next slide. Remember the characteristics of a veteran: resiliency and strength, life experiences. It all equals diversity, motivation, determination, leadership, maturity. And I got to tell you, from a guy from all lily white Green Bay, Wisconsin, the Air Force, the military was the best thing ever for me. It really opened my eyes to the whole world around me. I honestly felt if I would have gone straight to college like all my brothers and sisters, I probably would have fallen flat on my face. I didn't go back to school until I was 33, and I had my last master's degree on my 50th birthday. But you know, I probably would have failed. It was the military that gave me those life experiences and gave me the courage and the responsibility and the understanding of the real world. Okay? Remember, when you're not sure what to say to a veteran, just say what?
Welcome home.
Welcome home. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much. All right.
We have a few, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, this is your chance. Now, this is your chance. I don't say this too often, because after I retired, I started playing poker with a group of guys where none of them are veterans. Because somebody like me that's worked with veterans all my life, I mean, every time I turned the corner, you know, somebody had a question about VA benefits, medical care, and so when somebody asks me to join this little poker group on Thursday nights, I say, is anybody a veteran? And they go, no. I said, I'm in. Because I can sit, I can laugh, I can talk to you, and they're not asking me about, my VA compensation, the VA screwed me on this medal, It's after a while, so this is your chance. I'm giving you a chance, an opportunity. This is one of the few dinosaurs here that understand all the VA entities. So if you have a question that you think everybody out here could benefit from, I can maybe answer it. If I can't, I'll find you an answer. All right, you're all good. Oh my God. No, all right. So nobody's ever had an issue with their VA compensation, right? Or nobody's ever had an issue with a VA doctor or anything, right? No. Actually, I will say this. The department, I'm very proud of the fact that I worked for the VA. Okay, and I have to tell you this, and I truly mean this. 99% of the VA employees. And I've seen day in and day out, they work miracles. It's that 1 or 2% that you see in the frickin' news all the time that steal money and deny veterans access or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, they should fire that 1 or 2%. Okay? But I'm telling you, the majority of the VA employees, I have witnessed miracles day in and day out. And what do? They move on to the next veteran, and they help the next one, and they don't take a pat on the back. They're not out there bragging about it. They're not out there talking to the news people or anything. They're just doing their job day in and day out, and they have improved. They're not perfect, but they have improved substantially since the 40, 50, 60s in the last several years. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. We'd like to thank Jeff for taking his time out to come out to speak with us today. I thought it was I learned a lot. So, but it's a really important job, and I really appreciate all the effort you went to put this presentation together. I'm really happy about Larson, and I thought that Matt did a wonderful job with his portion of the presentation. I'd like to present to you, on behalf of the Vietnam veterans of Diablo Valley, a little liquid refreshment. So when you have a little taste, think of us.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. I really, again, I put this presentation together, but I called Matt and said, Matt, give me some help because I want to talk about pets, and so. Most of that information about pets being, the medication without side effects came from Matt and all his work with Paws to Purple Heart and all his work with service dogs. So thank you, and thank you for taking time to be here tonight.
Okay, that's the speaker for tonight.